when the sequel to Breath of the Wild was revealed during the E3 2019 Nintendo Direct. Naturally, a lot of people, despite the now in development statement, were betting on a 2020 release. However, after a total absence at the 2019 Game Awards, the first Direct, mini of the year, and the probability that we won't see the game until a big presentation, probably the Nintendo Direct that will be replacing the E3 2020 Nintendo Direct. But is there still a possibility that the sequel will make a 2020 release? That is the big question. Just to clarify, we're not here to promote the 2020 option or the 2021 option, but rather put facts and arguments on the table for and against the 2020 launch of the game. But first of all, a massive thanks to all of you for making us 245,000 subscribers strong, which means that we're less than 5,000 away from the big 250,000. Be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to join us on this milestone charge. Now on to the first argument for a 2020 release. As the most prominent reason for a 2020 release is the fact that we haven't seen anything from the game since the E3 trailer. Hence, we have no idea how far along the line the Zelda team actually is when it comes to the development. Aonuma stated during an interview with IGN right after the E3 presentation that the team kept coming up with more and more new ideas, to the point where they decided to bring these concepts over to a sequel as opposed to just another DLC pack. Remember, DLC Pack 2, which includes the Champion's Ballad, released on December 7, 2017, a full 1.5 years before the 2019 E3 trailer was shown. It is highly likely that development on the sequel started shortly after DLC Pack 2, or right before it was released, which means that the game could have already been in development for as long as little over 2 years right now. Combine that with the ability to reuse the engine and a lot of assets from the original game, and we can definitely see that this is not outside the realm of possibilities.
Let's go back for a moment to June of 2014. When Eiji Aonuma first presented the new world of Zelda. Back then, people assumed that we only got to see this pre-rendered cutscene because, well, they didn't have anything else to show. However, fast forward only 6 months later at the Game Awards, and we can see that the game was already taking shape. The paraglider, the Sheikah Slate's beacon function, horse riding, and even slow motion were already implemented, though still in a less refined state. We can even see that the map was already largely laid out. At this point in time, they were even convinced they were gonna make a 2015 release, which, well, we all know how that worked out. They most definitely did not make all this progress in just a 6-month gap between E3 and the Game Awards, meaning they probably had more to show but settled on a trailer until they were ready to show more. The biggest reason and challenge which ultimately caused the game to be delayed to such a degree was the physics/chemistry engine, as well as some new ambitions and ideas along the way. So unless Nintendo decides to try something crazy ambitious from a technical standpoint, something very hard to develop for the sequel, they won't have the same hurdles they had with the original. Nintendo sure as heck did not spend 1.5 years creating the short story trailer that we saw at the E3 this year, and similarly to 2014, might have had more to show but simply chose to only go with the trailer as not to give too much away at once. Again, until we actually get new information about the game, hopefully somewhere around June or earlier, we simply have no way to judge if a 2020 release is still doable. It all depends on what we will see when it happens. Which brings me to the next point, the current lineup in regards to AAA titles from Nintendo this year. While some of you will undoubtedly be able to dedicate the next few months of your lives to Animal Crossing New Horizons, for the people that are not in the Animal Crossing boat, this year looks a little bit more barren as of right now. Sure, we have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition coming, and there is a big chance that Nintendo will do something special for Mario's anniversary. However, more remakes, re-releases, collections, and remasters are not going to be enough to hold us over for the rest of the year. And with the next gen lurking around the corner, Nintendo would be wise to at least have one big system seller to counter Microsoft and Sony. And what better way to do this than to at least have one big holiday title? Speaking of remakes, luckily the main Zelda team did not need to bother with other side projects like Link's Awakening for Switch, instead letting Grezzo do all the heavy lifting and only taking on the role of a supervisor. Even if they plan to release Skyward Sword HD somewhere this year, this should not detract too much from the development time of the main team. Instead, they will likely have a secondary party take care of the lion's share, similar to how Tantalus took care of Twilight Princess HD. When it comes to the big Nintendo titles, Zelda is the only one as of right now that has actually been shown. If there's one game that can still make it this year, it's this one. Metroid has gone back to the drawing board, Mario Odyssey took 3 years to make, so a sequel will not likely be both revealed and released in the same year, and we are still completely in the dark in regards to a new Pikmin game. Even if one or more of these titles gets revealed in June, it's unlikely that any of them will be released in 2020. The last option to consider is one that I hope not to be true, but we do have to look at all the possibilities. And that is that Breath of the Wild 2 might just not turn out to be as grand and expansive as everyone, including us, are speculating. A good parallel to draw would be Xenoblade 2 Torna the Golden Country. Developed in 1 year, released as a standalone game and a follow-up, or actually prequel, to Xenoblade 2. However, compared to the main game, a lot more compact. Another example would be Mario Galaxy 2, having a stripped-down story and mostly consisting of unused ideas and mechanics from the original. And of course, Majora's Mask being smaller in scope than Ocarina of Time with less main dungeons and a smaller overworld. Well, this is what happens when less development time is invested in making a sequel, which in the case of Breath of the Wild 2 would be a pretty big disappointment and a missed opportunity to create something truly amazing. And if making a bigger, more ambitious Zelda title means sacrificing a 2020 release, then we will gladly wait another year. So, making a long story short, the lack of a first-party holiday title for 2020, the next-gen breathing down Nintendo's neck, combined with the fact that the game might be in a much further state of development than we think, or may not even be the big title we were hoping for, could make a 2020 release possible. Not likely, but possible.
A smaller game is a possibility, but which we find very unlikely, as a strategy like this will backfire hard. Just look at the Metascore for DLC Pack 2 The Champion's Ballad on Metacritic and you will know what I mean. With a direct sequel reusing the same game engine and art style, you know that sky-high expectations need to be met by the developers, and that the expansion pack free argument will easily show up, seeing that Breath of the Wild 2 grew out from being DLC free, a fact that even series producer Eiji Aonuma confirmed in numerous interviews during E3 2019. And let's face it, Zelda has a massive reputation to uphold, especially after Breath of the Wild. And if the sequel to a game that sits with a 97 on Metacritic is nothing else but a masterpiece, then it is likely to be a disappointment. Making a direct sequel is already a massive risk for Nintendo, as comparisons to the original cannot be avoided, and hence there's only one option. You need to surpass it, especially when it comes to the story and character department, dungeons, bosses, new areas, and partially also new gameplay innovations. And all of this takes time to put together, especially petting dogs, which was confirmed by Eiji Aonuma in his E3 2019 IGN interview. Since we're on the topic of E3, it is among the many reasons why it's possible that Breath of the Wild 2 will not come out this year, so let's get into them. First of all, we need to address the big elephant in the room, the situation in the world this year, since all big events around the world set to take place until the end of August have been cancelled or delayed to 2021. The most prominent so far being the Euro 2020 Football Championships, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, and for us gamers, E3 2020. E3 has naturally been cancelled this year, as E3 is an annual event, so it didn't have to be postponed. But we should not underestimate how much this cancellation, or lack of in-person demo opportunities, might have impacted Nintendo's strategy for this year. Well, with exception of Animal Crossing, as its release date was confirmed at E3 2019, then reassured in the Nintendo Direct in September, and multiple promotional videos in January. And on top of that, the situation we are in didn't turn global until a few weeks prior to release. With that being said, the rest of Nintendo's lineup for 2020 has likely been impacted, and that includes the Breath of the Wild sequel, if it was scheduled for this year in the first place. Next, we have an overlooked detail: anniversaries. 2020 is Mario's 35th anniversary, not Zelda's, as we will celebrate that next year in 2021. And yes, you may say that many Zelda games don't come out on anniversaries, but ever since Twilight Princess came out in 2006 for the launch of the Wii and the 20th anniversary of Zelda, things have changed for 3D Zelda games. As Skyward Sword was launched in 2011, Zelda's 25th anniversary, and not only was decided to make Breath of the Wild a launch title for the Switch, it was also scheduled for 2016, the 30th anniversary of Zelda. What is to say that Nintendo isn't planning another big Zelda year next year? Well, more on that in a minute, as there are other Zelda games that Nintendo could fill 2020 out with. One of them is the previously mentioned Skyward Sword, with story tied closely to that of Breath of the Wild, and even more so to Ganondorf and the Eternal Curse. Lore established in Skyward Sword is found everywhere in Breath of the Wild. The only problem is that few of those who played the Switch and Wii U masterpiece have played the 25th anniversary Zelda game with the best and most important story in the series so far. Hence, it is likely that just like with the heavily rumored Mario collection, that Zelda could also get a remaster this year, as these games are low risk, easy to market and sell during these trying times. Especially if Skyward Sword will also sell as part of a Zelda HD or Triforce collection with the Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, all games that are important to Breath of the Wild and the Zelda timeline. Besides, it will not hurt for the most ambitious Zelda game of all time to get a few extra months or even a full year of development. Remember, in order to justify their direct sequel and same engine, they have to surpass the original. In other words, would you, under such pressure to conclude the story to one of the most impactful Zelda games ever, take the risk of rushing it out for the holiday season? Absolutely not. Too much is at stake after Zelda has been brought up to 3D Mario sales numbers with Breath of the Wild, something that has changed Zelda and made it more valuable than ever to Nintendo. And what brought it up to this level in the first place? Quality and game design innovation, the mind-blowing physics engine and feeling of fully exploring a massive world without boundaries, thanks to the simple mechanics of climbing and paragliding. However, Breath of the Wild lacks something like good storytelling, dungeons that can challenge the best ones in the series, and boss and enemy variety. Crucial highlights of past Zelda games which underwhelmed or were simply missing in the base game. Besides, console Zelda games usually do not come out in round years, that is 5 or zeros, with exception of Majora's Mask, a game Eiji Aonuma is not too fond of due to the constant time-constraint pressure he and his team felt developing that game. After all, the last thing we want is a Zelda game that is the product of time crunching the development team, and the Zelda team does not deserve this kind of treatment, as they bring innovation to the games industry and great joy and an unrivaled sense of discovery and control to gamers around the world. Besides, when was the last time a 3D Zelda game was first teased and then released a year after? The Wind Waker in 2001, though only for the Japanese market, as for everyone else, the game was localized for 2003. And there is indeed a pattern. Twilight Princess being first revealed at E3 2004, titled at E3 2005, demoed again for 2006, before finally launching with the Wii that fall. Skyward Sword first being revealed and teased at E3 2009, titled and demoed at E3 2010, and showcased again during E3 2011 prior to its release in the holiday season. Then you have Breath of the Wild, which was revealed at E3 2014, delayed in 2015, and then teased again later that year, then delayed again before E3 2016, where the game was finally titled and demoed. Though the last delay had nothing to do with the game itself, but rather Nintendo's new strategy to launch the game with the Nintendo Switch in March 2017. Which brings us to our final point why Breath of the Wild 2 might not come out in 2020. Namely the fact that Nintendo's president Shuntaro Furukawa himself confirmed that Nintendo will not reveal or release any new Switch hardware this year. Why does this matter? As Zelda is very closely tied to the launch of new Switch models. The Nintendo Switch base model, which delayed Zelda Breath of the Wild to March 3rd, 2017, the Nintendo Switch Lite, which launched the same day as the HD remake of Link's Awakening, and now we're likely to see the same thing happening with a new Switch model, which is likely being prepared for hardcore open world games in 2021. Which other game than the sequel of Breath of the Wild is perfect to show the power of that revision? None, as it is the perfect candidate for technical comparisons. It is also the perfect system seller, period, as the Nintendo Switch launch year plan in 2017 clearly showed. In this regard, it is likely that Nintendo might be cooking up quite a lineup for 2021 to replicate the success of 2017, launch a new Nintendo Switch model with a new 3D Zelda, aka Breath of the Wild 2, and then in the next months follow up with Mario Odyssey 2 or Galaxy 3, and what else than the new IP Monolith Soft already has shown concept art of. Just like with the Nintendo Switch launching with Breath of the Wild and then being followed up by Super Mario Odyssey and concluded with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 later the same year. A perfect mid-gen boost that will add confidence to the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo stockholders against the threat of the next-gen systems and reduce AAA third-party support on the Nintendo Switch from 2021. Nintendo can naturally start this wave of PR for Breath of the Wild sequel in the next Nintendo Direct with a title reveal, then continue at the Game Awards 2020 before revealing the new Nintendo Switch model and the launch day in the first Nintendo Direct of 2021. Then the release can either come in the first half of 2021 or maybe after E3 2021 and the Tokyo Olympics. no matter what Nintendo decides to do. Having Zelda first hyped up at the Game Awards 2020 instead of competing against Doom Eternal, Half-Life Alyx, Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Last of Us Part 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Halo Infinite is a much better option. Especially if Breath of the Wild 2 can then walk up and crush the competition for Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2021. And there you have it, all imaginable arguments in favor and against Breath of the Wild sequel launching this year. But what do you think? Will Breath of the Wild launch in 2020 or sometime in 2021? Leave your reply in the comment section down below. Also, if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe, and press that shiny notification bell for all notifications, as this is the final charge to 250,000 subscribers. There's then 5,000 subscribers to go, so let's get there. Finally, a big thanks to all our patrons on patreon.com/commonroll. You can join them too, or by pressing the join button here on YouTube to become a member. Anyway, until the next video, please enjoy one of these two awesome videos.